10 plugins. So my number one thing, most used or most useful that everybody's going to use at some point, I think, is you've been in that situation too, Manel, right? Where you tried the stock options and then eventually moved on to a better one. And I think it just sounds better.
It changed like drastically, I think, my mixes. Those are things that I guess we really need to get our job done the way we want, right? So all the other things are cool but are not necessary, right?
Yeah.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
We haven't done a gear episode in a while, and people ask us all the time which plugins they should get, what we think of some new tool that came out, etc. So let's do one again. Let's do a gear episode. Here's the truth, and it may surprise you. If we could only use 10 plugins for the rest of our lives, this is what we choose and why. We don't make this episode to promote specific brands. I just want to say that before we get into it. And we don't get paid to mention any of them here. So we'll try to stay away from specific brands here. We're more interested in explaining the why behind those types of tools and like why we go with this, why it's worth learning these first, in our opinion. And it's what we think is that it's worth knowing, or it's better knowing a handful of tools really well than having like hundreds of them and trying to use all of them, but not really understanding any of them fully and not knowing what they do and how to get the most out of them. So we believe in using a couple of tools that you know really, really well, picking them for specific reasons, using them intentionally. And yeah, so that's what we're going to do. It also doesn't matter which DAW you're using. So these recommendations they will work regardless of your main software choice, and we'll also give you stock alternatives wherever we think it's possible, in case we're mentioning third-party stuff. All right, so if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm Benedikt Hein. I'm the host of this show. I'm a mixing engineer, and I run a studio called Outback Recordings. We mix a ton of songs every year, between 200 and 300 songs per year. We've been doing that for a long time, and everything we've learned working with so many artists and labels, we're sharing on this podcast so that you can make better records at home, at your jam space, at your home studio. If you're already a listener, welcome back. So stoked to have you. Please know that this is both an audio podcast, but also a video podcast if you prefer to watch on YouTube. And as always, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm doing this with my wonderful friend and co-host, music producer exceptional from Madrid, Spain, Manel Espinosa Berenguer. Hello.
Hello, Benedikt. And first of all, I want to say that I admire you, and I'm so relieved that I'm not doing the intro this week.
You might be able to tell that I keep looking at my notes when I do the intros, just because I also can't do them sometimes from the top of my head. But yeah, thank you. Still, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, for you guys, if you don't know who I am, I'm Manel Espinosa, and I'm a music producer and mixing engineer from Spain. As I always say, always happy to help artists bring their demos to a final professional result and through a lovely process. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm back on the show. As you might have noticed last week, Manel did his solo debut on the podcast, the first solo episode ever. And at this point, I haven't even listened to it because it's going to be out later today, and I have to still get it out there and listen to it. Actually, I'm super excited to see what you've done. I just was on a trip to the US, made a record there, spent 95 hours working in 1 week, which was pretty crazy. So I didn't have time to record a podcast episode, and Manel was cool enough to just say yes to my proposal that I made, where I was like, can you do a one on your own? So thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure it's absolutely valuable. And thank you so much for giving me some time back there. It was a crazy week.
You're welcome, and it was a challenging and interesting experience.
Yeah, I believe that. I totally believe that. Yeah. So in case I'm a little, I don't know, maybe I hope I can get through this episode just fine. But I just have to tell you, if you're listening to this, watching this, I'm incredibly tired today. I just got back from the US on Monday after this like really crazy week. The jet lag is still hitting hard, and I am, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit. To stay focused. So let's put it like that. But I think we're going to do fine. So, Manel, 10 plugins. Like I said, it's not going to be specific tools or brands. I want to stay away from that. But at the end, I want to share some thoughts on like things that you can check out if you go just through our backlog of episodes where we promoted some stuff. But in this episode, I try to stay away from brands because I really don't think that it's a specific brand or type of plugin that you should use. I think it's a specific category of plugins, and there's always more than one option for that. And if you give me any of those, I'd be fine. So I've put a list together here of the stuff that I use most of the time, or that I would use or pick if I was to pick 10 different plugins. And I'm curious to hear if yours are the same or similar, or if you disagree anywhere, or maybe you have some stuff that you need for your type of work more than I needed for my type of work, because I'm mixing primarily. You do more production work. Maybe there's a difference. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah. And then also another thing to get out of the way that just is important to say: make sure you have all the instruments and amps and samples first. So these are not included in this list. I'm talking about audio processing plugins, right? For the mixing part of this. I thought about including certain virtual instruments and stuff, but this is just not going to be useful, because this completely depends on the genre and style you're working on the type of music you make. You know, some people need drums, others don't. Some people need strings, some need horns or whatever. Some need guitar amps, and like I could easily fill out 10 spots just by mentioning all the different, virtual instrument types. So I just say, get that out of the way first. Most DAWs, they are not really the stock virtual instrument options are not the best in many DAWs. Some stuff is good, but like most in this department, you're going to need some third-party solutions likely. So start there. Get your amp sims if you need them. Get your drums. Get your strings or whatever you want to use in your productions. And when that is out of the way, just like the real instruments, by the way, when that is out of the way, then focus on these tools that we are talking about right now. Just gonna have to say it. Cool. All right. So my number one thing, most used or most useful that everybody's going to use at some point, I think, is really any stock EQ or versatile digital EQ, ideally with a dynamic feature. So just, a simple, not like some emulation of a fancy hardware, just a simple EQ. You can clean up things, you can make things sound nicer, you can correct problems. EQ is, I would say, right after levels and balancing, the most important basic mixing tool that everybody needs. And so I'd be fine with really any modern digital EQ. Bonus points if it has a dynamic feature, because then you can also use it as a de-esser or, to fix certain frequency problems dynamically. And yeah, pick one. There are many out there. Stock option, as promised. In my case, the one that I can think of is Cubase Frequency. It's called Frequency. It's a stock Cubase EQ. I use Cubase primarily, so that's what I think about. And it's great. It does everything I need it to do. It has dynamic options. It has different filter types. It's just a good digital EQ. Comes with Cubase. No need to purchase anything else. You would agree with that, Manil, or you live without EQ?
No, I don't think so. The only thing that I could think is that I normally use the stock EQ from Logic, but it doesn't have a dynamic feature. And also, one thing that it doesn't have that some other EQs have is that it doesn't have the option to only listen to whatever you're removing. And I find that very useful. That's why I also use other EQ plugins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And again, we're specifically trying to avoid mentioning brands here, because we don't want to, we know there are many different options. And if we support a specific brand or tool here, that will, I just don't want to do that. You can pick your own tools. You can figure it out. There are certain, I hate the term, but like industry standards or whatever. But there's also always an alternative. You'll find a digital EQ dynamic feature. Google it, find one that works for you. Go with that. The next one is, and yeah, I agree that the digital, I like the isolating the frequency part is really useful too. That and the dynamic feature. Yeah. The next one is some sort of vibe EQ. So again, EQ. It's just EQ is important to me. I think it is one of the most important mixing tools. And I was thinking about whether or not I should put this on the list because you could do all of your EQing with just one. But still, in my mixing workflow, I would love to have a different EQ for a certain reason. And what I mean with vibe EQ is a broad and musical EQ that is not surgical and that doesn't have a graph where I can look at the frequencies. And so I would probably go with some sort of Pultec emulation. There are stock options like the Logic Vintage EQ collection has a Pultec in there, and also a Neve and an API, I think, is the three that Logic has. In Cubase, there's the EQP1A, which is also a Pultec emulation. The nice thing about these is it's like 2 or 3 bands, very broad, big picture kind of tone shaping. You don't see the graph, you just turn knobs. You only have a few things you can do. It's more broad, musical, going with your gut kind of thing. And it allows you to make different types of decisions. And I use the digital surgical EQ for like fixing problems, cleaning up things, being very precise. And then the other one to just make things sound nicer, make it a little brighter, make it a little fuller in the low end, and just without looking at a graph. So I'd like to have some sort of vibe EQ. So again, I could totally do with a stock option here.
Yeah, I use Pultec emulation quite a lot, and I like the fact that you can, push a certain frequency and at the same time bring it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's for some reason I like that approach.
The Pultec trick, yeah. Yeah, that's why I said probably one of the Pultec emulations. But there's other vibe EQs out there as well. Like pick one that you find exciting, that gives you good results, and go with that. Go through your stock options first because there might be one in there. Then next thing, I would choose a general, versatile, all-purpose compressor with optional drive or color features, like a versatile compressor that ideally also has a cool box tone, like just a sound to it that I can use, because compression is not always about actually compressing things for me. It's often about giving signals a certain vibe and color. And so I've thought about, whether I should include a clean stock compressor and then another vibey one. But actually, in this case, I just went with one because my personal choice would be any distressor emulation. And I know I said I don't want to mention brands, but I'm not saying the specific plugin types. I'm just saying the hardware that it emulates, and you can then pick the one you would want. But I have to say it in this case because the one compressor that really does it all for me is the distressor, which is a hardware compressor, and there's different emulations of that. And what I love so much about the distressor is I just know it really well. I've used it a lot also as hardware. But a distressor can be a super fast 1176 style compressor. It can be a slow opto style compressor, and those two cover most of my mixing needs. I sometimes need a really fast one to tame transients and to make things aggressive and upfront. Sometimes I need a slow one to just do general leveling. Sometimes I need a combination of both. And the distressor just does both of these things really, really well. And then it also has built-in, saturation, distortion that I can shape to my liking. I can use it for just saturation without compressing. It's just such a good Swiss Army knife of a compressor that I just have to mention a distressor emulation of some sort. With that, I can do really, really a lot. And if I only had that, it would totally work. It's a little too dirty for bus compression purposes for me. Like drum bus and that is awesome. On the mix bus, it can work, but it's really not subtle, And for mastering, I wouldn't use it. That's why we get into a different category later in this list. But for any channel or subgroup kind of processing or parallel, give me some sort of distressor emulation and I'll be a happy mixer. Yeah. I don't know if you have a go-to all-in-one type of compressor. The stock options, and maybe you use that. I have to say the stock options here are the Cubase Vintage and the Opto compressor. It's like, I know it's 2 plugins, but Cubase has these 2 in separate plugins, where one is more like a distorted, dirty 1176 type of thing, and the other one, the Opto, the tube compressor in Cubase, is more like a slower leveling thing that also has a drive. So between the vintage and the tube compressor in Cubase, you can get a lot of this done. And Logic has a really phenomenal stock compressor because it has the FET's 1176 thing, it has the LA2A, LA3A, even a bus compressor. It has like all the different compression types built into one plugin, and you can just switch between them. And so I think the Logic stock option is really great because it does all of those things, even clipping and limiting and other things just in one plugin.
Yeah, that's the one I use sometimes, but I also use like just one 1176 and a LA2A.
Yeah.
I like some like this. I don't even know who is it from, but it has a tube emulation. I think it's called a tube compressor or something like that.
Yeah. But I think you're the same, that you use some sort of faster compressor and some sort of slower compressor depending on the track, and then maybe a combination of the two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great. So EQ and compression, we have that. And again, levels, balancing, and then EQ and compression. Those are your basic mixing tools that everyone's going to need at some point. And with just that, if you only knew those things really well, by the way, if you just had not good EQ knowledge and ear training there, good compression knowledge, and you can set your levels well, and you have decent monitoring, you can get a mix like 80% there with just that. That's like the most important stuff in mixing. So learn those tools first. So next thing on my list was not because it's the next important one, but it's just because we're talking about compressors already. So the next one would be a clean, high-quality compressor for mastering and wherever the distressor is not working. So I do mixing and mastering. That's why I want that too. And sometimes the distressor is just a little dirty. And I think most people who mix should also learn a little bit about mastering, even if it's just to create a fake master before you actually send it to mastering, just because you want to hear your stuff as close to finished as possible. And also, if you're working for others, you want to send out a mix that is as close to finished as possible. And even if they send it to an external mastering engineer, you still want to give them something that sounds like a finished record. So I think a little bit of mastering knowledge is good for everyone. And so I would add a high quality, clean kind of mastering compressor. Stock options, unfortunately, none here, because I have never heard one that is really great there. You can try, of course, and I've tried the tube compressor in Cubase, and it worked. I've tried a stock compressor, and it worked to a degree, but none of these I would consider like really mastering grade, super clean, high quality compressors. So if anyone has like a stock option that is really, really good, even for mastering purposes, let me know. But as far as my own experience goes, this is one of the departments where I go to a third party, and there's countless options out there. You got to do a little bit of research, try a few things, and then settle with one or two, whatever you want to go with. I use pretty much one or two, not many more than that. I could use any, but like I just chose my favorites. So yeah, not an absolute essential thing, but on my list, if I were to pick 10, I would have a clean compressor in there for mastering. You use anything like that?
Yes.
Cool. So the next thing is, again, a compressor. And this time it's an SSL style. I'm going to switch order here on my list real quick, Manel. But the next one is going to be an SSL style bus compressor. Because for my mix bus, I want to mix into a compressor. I just can't live without that. I mean, I could, but I don't want to. It's just such an important part of my mixing that I put on. I put the SSL bus compressor on in the very beginning of my mix, and then I just mix into it. It gives me, the glue. It gives me some extra punch, some movement. I can interact with the compressor as I push levels into it. It's just a great way to make your tracks sound like one mix, basically. And there's a reason for why most mixing engineers mix into a bus compressor, and why mixing consoles have one built into them. And I personally would pick any SSL bus compressor. And there's, again, so many different options out there when it comes to emulations. I just pick one, study kind of the go-to settings of most mixers, and you'll find that many people use the same kind of approach there. Learn how that works and interacts, put it on there, and never think about it again. And it just made my mixing a lot better once I started doing that. And because I used to put it on at the end, and I tried all kinds of different compressors until I figured out, you know what, I'm just going to use an SSL comp, because that's what is in the SSL consoles. That's what so many mixers use for good reason. I'm going to mix into it because that's also what everyone tells me and what I see people do. And yeah, turns out it also works for me. And I've been doing it for, I don't know, many, many, many years. And it's just a thing I would highly recommend you get. You can also use that on, drum as a drum bus compressor. You can use it in parallel. You can use it on other things too. But as a general mix bus compressor, great choice and will work for pretty much every genre. Stock options, again, the Logic compressor has an SSL bus compressor built into it. I don't know if there's any others. Sometimes I was able to make a clean standard compressor work in Cubase, the standard VCA clean compressor that's in there. Yeah, but the Logic bus comp is pretty decent. Yeah.
Yep.
You mixing into a bus comp these days or not? Because not everyone does. I'm just
Yes,
wondering.
I do.
Yeah,
because I learned that from you.
Yeah. Have you ever tried the stock Logic comp for that? Does it work for you?
Yes, I've used it many times, as well as another PCA compressor.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, those two are the two things that I have there. And I can choose every time.
Great, that's the way. Cool. The next one, and this is probably my top plugin of all these that I just mentioned. Again, if I had to limit it down to like just one or two, I would probably use a simple EQ, and maybe one compressor or whatever. But when it comes to like favorites of all of that, or maybe that would be my one choice, actually. Maybe I would choose that one thing, actually. Anyway, my favorite, most used plugin is an SSL style channel strip. So this is number 6 on the list here. So an SSL style channel strip, again, any brand would do. Pick your favorite. But what's so nice about this is it's a channel of a mixing console. So it gives you the EQ. In some versions, also the preamp and the saturation. It gives you a gate, a compressor. It gives you, a tool where you can add a little bit of color depending on how you do the gain staging within that thing. But it's just a great complete mixing channel strip that covers your EQ and compression needs. And you could probably get away with just using that. You could use it for surgical cleanup and also for vibe. You can use it for color. You can use it for compression. So you can get a lot done with that, which is, it was made for that. It's the part of a mixing console that is on every single channel, and it's supposed to give you all the tools you need when you mix a song. So that would probably be my one plugin that if I had to choose just one. And the SSL ones work particularly well for me. They have great versatile EQ. You can go from very narrow corrections to broad and vibey. Again, I don't see a graph, so I can mix with my ears. I don't know what the curve looks like, which is awesome. I have a pretty cool, punchy, grabby compressor. I can switch between faster and slower settings there. It works on pretty much every instrument. I have a little bit of dirt and vibe if I push the preamp or the saturation built into it. So yeah, SSL channel strip, one of my favorite tools. Use it on pretty much every channel, on every mix. I just love it.
Yeah, I use them too. And I would like to tell you guys that if it's the first time that you use an SSL channel thing, you might get unwanted noise because some of those have this knob that you can turn off or on, and that's basically only noise, right?
Yep.
So yeah, just remember to turn it off.
Yeah, good point. That's true for some SSL channels. That's also true for many of the Waves plugins with their analog button. Some plugin manufacturers simulate the noise as well, and you have the option to turn it off. And for whatever reason, it's on by default on most of them. And if you use a lot of these channel strips or compressors or whatever that do that, you'll find a pretty loud noise floor at the end of when you're done mixing, and you might wonder where that comes from. And that's it. Yeah. So Manel ran into that. I did too. Yeah, and it's really just noise. If you see a button that says analog on Waves plugins, for example, it's really just noise and hum. It's no saturation or any magic. It's just noise. And you can choose to keep that or get rid of it. And the same is true for the V-Gain on the Plugin Alliance plugins and other knobs, that do that. It's funny that Sam Pura, a friend of ours who's been on the podcast and who makes the fantastic Purify plugins, this is one of the people that I actually like to support and mention their brand as something I encourage people to get because it's awesome and he's awesome. But he has in his manuals, I think it was the VU comp or something, like some tool that he has. In the manual, it says, also, by the way, we're not emulating any of the noise or hum in this plugin like other companies do. Sorry for not ruining your mixes. Yeah. So do with that whatever you want. Some people enjoy a bit of noise, but good pointing it out, Manel. Thanks. Good. The next one is going to be, and this is, again, for SSL style channel strips. Sorry to go back, but there's no stock options that I'm aware of. let me know if there are, but I don't think so. You can build a kind of a channel strip in Logic or in like Cubase with their strip feature, but yeah, not really. So the next one is a great mastering limiter. And this is one where, again, I don't see any stock options. I've tried all the limiters in the DAWs, and there was none of them was ever convincing to me. They all crumble. They all you can push them a little bit, but they just give in way too early, and they just make the mix flat and distort and all that. They're great on channels sometimes, but as a mastering compressor, I just haven't found a really satisfying one in the stock options. So a mastering limiter is one of the things that I would highly recommend you get as a third-party option. Just look at the different tools out there. But like I said, you should be able to get a mix out at a competitive kind of volume without destroying the mix. And a good mastering limiter just has to be part of your arsenal at some point, I believe. You've been in that situation too, Manel, right? Where you tried the stock options and then eventually moved on to a better one. And I think it just sounds better.
It changed like drastically, I think, my mixes.
Yeah. So yeah, pick one. Next thing would be a clipper or some sort of versatile distortion saturation plugin with a good clipping option maybe in it. So stock options would be any distortion tool, really. They are all, at the end of the day, it's just distortion. Try the ones you have, maybe different ones, play around with it, pick one you like, learn it. But I'd still probably get a third-party clipper because many of the stock or all of the stock options actually are, if you just want to use them as a clipper, they're kind of hard to make work. They are good for distorting things gradually, for obviously distorting things, for vibe and color and creative effects. But just for a transparent clipper, again, in a mastering chain or on a drum bus, to just control transients in a different way compared to what a limiter would do, I probably get a simple third-party clipper. There are free ones out there that are great. There are really, really professional good ones out there that are super cheap. So I would recommend you get one. It's going to become useful. It's a little bit of an advanced thing, but you find it handy once you know what it does. The combination of clipping and limiting allows for really transparent volume and punch. You can get it up to a higher loudness without destroying the mix. You can tame drum transients so much more easily. Sometimes clipping is more transparent than compression and limiting. Sometimes it's the combination of both. You can use it creatively. I'm just a big fan of distortion in general and using clippers. Yeah, transparently, but also audibly if I want to. And so that's why I recommend getting some kind of easy to use, cool clipper. But then also, if you don't want to do that, play around with the stock distortion and saturation options, and you'll find something that is just fun and gives your track some vibe and character at the end of the day, because in the box, everything's pretty clean anyways. So find a fun tool to play around with and add some grit and teeth to your sounds. Do you have a stock one that you keep going back to in Logic?
There's this one that I think it appeared in the last update, which is called Chroma Glow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using it quite often, but I'm not sure if it has a clipping feature. But anyways, you can get, as you said, you can get free clippers that work really well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Chroma Glow in Logic is actually a good sounding saturation tool. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
It has many options too. Like, yeah, I like it.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. The next one is gonna be a versatile delay. And I would even pick a delay before I'd pick a reverb, I think, because with delays, you can, if you make them dense enough and fast enough, you can make them sound like a reverb also. So with a good delay, it like covers all the effects and delay purposes for me. And in many mixes, a delay works better than a reverb for me anyways. So I would pick a good delay. My choice, I would go with any kind of, stereo delay that gives you a lot of creative options. There are good stock options there. So Cubase multi-tap delay is phenomenal. It's like a really fantastic creative delay tool. The Logic stereo delay also works fine. You can use it in mono. You can use it in stereo. I want to be able to have two different delay times left and right, a little bit of, flexibility there. But yeah, pick one. Learn how to use it. That was a big game changer for me once I learned to not only use reverb, but also learn to use delays in ways where it's not just an obvious echo, but different creative ways. Delays are a really fantastic tool to add depth and width and to give it an ambience tail that is not cluttering up the mix as much as a reverb. It's like learning delays is really, really, it's going to be really beneficial for you. So I would pick some sort of delay. Can be third party or stock. Is there another one in Logic that I'm not familiar with, Manel? I know the stereo delay. Maybe there's a newer one now. The stereo delay has been a very old Logic plugin that I think hasn't changed.
There are more, but I use that one. So
Okay, yeah, use that one.
don't really remember.
Cool.
No.
Yeah. Also remember that you can combine these tools on this list to create more and different options and more flexibility. So for example, I combine a delay with a saturation tool and an EQ sometimes, where I filter out the top and bottom maybe. I might distort it a little bit, saturate it. And so you can combine all of these to chains, of course, to get more flexibility and options out there. So if your delay plugin doesn't have a saturation option, just put a saturation plugin after that. And so, yeah.
I almost always have a delay which is sent to a reverb.
Oh, yeah. Good one. Yeah, totally. Me too. Which brings us to number 10 here, and there's a reverb. And I said specifically on my list here, an IR loader reverb, like an impulse response tool. Like in Cubase, it's Reverence, or in Logic, it would be the Space Designer. Just because that allows you to use any popular, famous kind of reverb algorithm out there, because there are IRs for everything. If you want a lexicon style plate or whatever, you can find an IR, load that. If you want SPX90, if you want an EMT, whatever, any time-based kind of any kind of reverb thing that you or sometimes even certain delay patches, like any multi-effects processing that can be captured in an IR, you can load these into an IR loader, and it just gives you tons of options. If you don't know what IRs are, look it up. It's called impulse response. It's just a way of capturing a certain tool, device, or rig, signal chain, or a room, like a snapshot of something that you can capture, then put into an IR loader and then reproduce and put it on a different source. So it's a really cool concept. It doesn't work for things like, I shouldn't have said time-based, because it actually doesn't work on time-based things like compression. It only works as a static snapshot of whatever is going on. But the response of a reverb, for example, you can capture that and then apply it to other sources, or the response of a room, or the response of a guitar cap, or the response of a whatever you're capturing, frequency response, and then also the tail of it in the reverb. You can capture that, put it on a different signal, and use it in your mix. So yeah, IR would be my choice, and most DAWs I think have stock options for that, and then you can find lots of like free and paid stuff online, and you can build your library of different effects types, and that also is a great learning experience, because if you do that, you'll learn what all the classic devices actually sound like and do. If you study, you know how your favorite records have been made, and then you hear a mixer talk about, well, we use the Lexicon 480 plate on this or whatever, then you can find an IR, put it in there, learn what that sounds like, or, it's like oftentimes people talk about their specific gear, and with reverbs and effects, all of that is available as an IR.
Yeah, and with those things, you can also do things like use acoustic guitar IRs if you don't have a microphone, a decent microphone or something. And even I used ukulele
Wow.
IRs for the ukulele at some point. Yeah.
Wow, crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Guitar caps, anything really. Learn about the concept of IRs. It's fascinating, and it would be my one reverb tool for many reasons, because it's so versatile. Mm-hmm. So these would be my 10. I feel like you don't disagree much, Manel.
No, I pretty much agree with everything. Like that, those are things that, we really, I guess we really need to get our job done the way we want, right? So all the other things are cool, but are not necessary, right?
Yeah, totally.
And even some of those are not even necessary, but, we've been talking about not super fancy things, but more like practical plugins. So,
yeah.
Maybe we can make another episode about 10 plugins that we use, but we don't need or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be cool too. So one thing I might want to add is, if you want to replace delay and reverb with any multi-effects processor that has the features and effects you need. You can do that because some people might need flanger and choruses all the time or whatever other effects, that we've not included here. And there are like multi-effects tools that give you all kinds of different effects. And maybe if you want to pick one of those instead of reverb or delay. But you can also be smart about it. And like, for example, if you use guitar sims, amp sims anyways, and you've already had these before going through the list here, like we said, like you want to have your instruments done first. In some of the guitar amp simulation plugins, you'll find lots and lots of pedals or rack units or whatever that cover different types of reverbs, choruses, flangers, phasers, all these kinds of other effects that you can also use on other sources. You can deactivate the amp and the cab part of the plugin and just use a phaser pedal or a chorus or a flanger or whatever on your vocals. You can get creative and combine different tools in a smart way. So if you think you need more creative effects, look at your amp sims first and also the stock options you have. Oftentimes also for these things, I'll find very simple, chorus, flanging, plugins in Cubase that will totally do the job. So I'm just saying, I don't know which kind of music you're making. So if you really need modulation effects of some sort, feel free to replace the reverb and the delay or just use any of the stock stuff, So that's one thing. And then if you can remove any of the 10 above because you don't need it for whatever reason, you can also add a multiband transient designer or just a normal transient designer. That's probably would be my next choice if I had one more slot. So in Cubase, it would be the envelope shaper or the multiband envelope shaper. In Logic, it's the enveloper as like a stock option. It's just great because you can increase or decrease the attack and the sustain of a sound. You can add more attack to drums or round off the attack of drums if they're too hard. You can decrease the sustain of toms that ring out for too long, for example, or it's just a good additional tool to have a transient designer. You can declick vocals, you can make things a little more aggressive if you want to. So next up on my list would be some sort of transient shaper. I haven't included it here because if I could live without one, I can find other ways to do it. I can round off transients with a limiter or clipper. I can increase transients with a compressor with certain settings. So I can work around that, but that would be my next kind of thing I would add probably. Mm-hmm. And whenever you find a stock plugin that does all you need for a specific job, I would use that and get something else that you can't do with a stock plugin instead, right? So I see sometimes people buy 5 different digital EQs where all of them do the same. They're under the hood, they're all the same, they all sound the same, they have different features maybe, but I think use your stock EQ first and then maybe get one with more options or a dynamic option or whatever, but then there's no need to buy another one really. You can just focus on fixing something that you cannot do in the DAW, right? So always try the stock options first and only get stuff that you cannot do in your DAW. That's, I think, general good advice. Yeah. And then I would say, we have a full episode on this, by the way. I would say learn one plugin at a time and try it on everything until you fully understand it and you can use it with confidence. And I would only buy new stuff when you maxed out your current tools or when you run into a situation that you cannot solve with the current tools. There's this great episode that I've heard, I think, between Andrew Sheps and Michael Brower, and they talked about this, where they said, like, pick one plugin and use it on everything. Try to make it break, try to make it distort, try to make it do too much, do it on different sources, do everything you can with just one plugin until you fully learned it, and then move on to the next one. And you'll find that you only need a couple of tools to do all kinds of things, and that you get so much better at being intentional and mixing well if you really know your tools inside out, instead of knowing a lot of tools just on a superficial level. And we have a full episode on this too, where I talk about this conversation that I heard and what my take on it is. But I fully agree. Like, pick a couple, learn them really well, and you're going to be better off than buying all the plugins in the world and not knowing them well.
Yes, I 99% agree with you.
Okay.
But I like to give myself a little tiny bit of space to use something that I don't know what's doing.
Yeah, I agree with there actually too.
But like some plugin that I use here, I don't know what's doing, but I like it, and I don't even want to know what it is doing. So yeah, just 1%.
Yeah, totally agree. But also, when you do that, you find something that you like, and then you remember that, and you can use it next time, and it becomes intentional again, right? This is the extra experimenting where you get better kind of part. I agree with that. I agree. So, yeah, give yourself some room for just playing around with stuff without knowing it. I agree. But still, most of it should be intentional and stuff you know, because otherwise you'll never finish your songs and you won't be mixing to your full potential. Yeah. Cool. Now, any gear recommendations that you find on this podcast or our YouTube channel are absolutely worth checking out. I want to say that. So on this episode, we didn't mention specific brand recommendations because we don't want to play favorites, and we don't want to exclude certain things that we forget about or whatever. So that's why we didn't do it. But we have episodes out there where we promote certain tools. We didn't get paid to promote any of these. We only promote things that we actually love and use regularly. And, like I said, I don't want to play favorites here or forget anyone. But if you go through our archive and find a recommendation, you can be sure that it's actually great. We had great people on this podcast making great tools. We believe in the people behind those tools, the companies, and the tools themselves. We use them actually. So if you ever find us talking about a specific tool that we love, you can trust that we really mean it. And whether it works for you or not, you have to decide yourself. But we never recommend stuff just because we got paid to do so, but actually hate the tool. That's not happening. So just so you know. All right. As always, let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube what your favorite plugins are that you cannot live without. I always love to discover new things. Let us know if you disagree with anything on the list here. Let us know really your thoughts on this. We'd really love to interact with you. And if you want to learn exactly what compression sounds like, how to be able to hear compression, if you want to learn what I mean by like clean up EQ and then sweetening EQ, how I use all these tools in my workflows or how we use them in our workflows, you can go to the selfrecordingband.com and apply for coaching, because this is exactly what we do there. We walk people through all of these things, help them find their own workflow, tell them what we use, but also make sure that they build their own workflows, their own chains. They build the hearing, ability to be able to hear compression, to be able to tell whether or not something needs compression and all those things. And if you want to be intentional about your tool choices, you want to get the most out of the stuff you already have, want to know what to listen for, when and when not to use certain things, and ultimately find your own best workflow, we're here to help you. And it all starts by you going to the selfrecordingband.com, click the Apply Now button, fill out a quick questionnaire, and we look at this. And if you are a great fit, in our opinion, then we just jump on a quick call with you, talk about it all, create a free plan for you, and then you can decide if you want to work with us together on this or not. This is how it works. All right. Thanks again for listening. Now I'm going to go and listen to Manel's solo episode from last week. You've probably already checked it out if you're watching this or listening to this. So I appreciate you for doing that, and I hope to see you next week.
Yeah, see you.